Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Wednesday, June 27th, 2012. Tropics still fairly active for latter June. It's been active, it seems, since the latter part of May, and it just has stayed that way. Pretty remarkable in a season that was supposed to be less than normal activity. It is said by most hurricane researchers, climatologists that study the hurricane season forecasts, that June and July activity have no bearing, or at least little bearing, on what happens during the peak months of the hurricane season when this region becomes active. Supposedly, the early season activity has no bearing on what happens in August, September, October. We shall see, because right now, in the deep tropics, we do have quite a flare-up of convection, especially considering it's late June. This area here, outlined at 10%, is a fairly well-defined tropical wave. We'll look at that in more detail in just a minute. Here is Debby getting pulled on out in association with this front that came off. A fairly large mid-latitude cyclone up here in a trough that carved out over the eastern United States, allowing Debby to find an escape route, and it'll head on out to sea, and then strong high pressure will build in over the eastern U.S., making for a very, very hot end to the week and into the weekend. Take a look at this tropical wave. You can definitely see a curvature to the cloud pattern here. It is an easterly wave. You can almost see the shape of it there in the flow in the deep tropics here. It's trying to organize, but not a lot of instability out here. It's still just late June, but it is impressive to see something like this time of year. Impressive in terms of that usually you don't see it. I know that folks downstream would just rather have nothing coming at them from the east. This will probably push on through the islands and bring some squally weather over about the next 4 days or so. Here is Debby, finally off the coast of Florida. It'll try to intensify as it moves on out to the northeast. Bermuda, you might want to keep an eye on this. Could bring some windy, rainy conditions to you, and we'll have to see how that works out. Probably still a couple of days away before that happens. A close-up of Debby. You can see the center of circulation wrapped in here somewhere, and the bands of showers and thunderstorms trying to wrap back in. Now there's a lot of dry air behind this front, and it has to ingest some of that and then work it out, what we call mix it out, before it finally turns off, hopefully bypassing Bermuda, which is that little dot on the map right there. As I mentioned, this region of the U.S. here is going to get very, very hot over the next few days as high pressure at all levels of the atmosphere begins to build in. Check out what Debby did to the sea surface heat content in the Gulf of Mexico. This is June the 22nd, and you can tell this little lighter shade of blue right here, and then you have the dark blue up here. Still very low heat content, but there was some, and look what happened after Debby passed. It really knocked that down. A lot of that heat content that was there, little as it may have been, was eroded away because of the churning action of Debby through here. Knocked that down a little bit. Make no mistake, it will recover, and the Gulf of Mexico here will have lots of high ocean heat content through the loop current. The rest of the Gulf will fill in. Again, it's only late June, still about 60 days to go before the big time peak of the hurricane season arrives. I want to show you the GFS. This is the 5,000 foot level from today's 12Z run. There's the tropical wave down in the deep tropics. And you can tell exactly why it's called an easterly wave. See how most of these wind barbs come straight across? I mean, perfect. East to west. Then you have a kink right there, a little turning, a little wave of low pressure in the pressure field down there, and it also shows up in the wind field. And we are looking for the vorticity values. For example, here is Debby, and it's got pretty good vorticity or spin in the atmosphere. This also has pretty good vorticity with it, the mid-latitude storm that I was pointing out on satellite picture. This has just a tiny bit of spin, very, very low vorticity value, but it's there and it's able to sort of put a perturbation, if you will, into the atmosphere down in the deep tropics. Watch for the next couple of days here. I think I added 5 frames, which will be 5 days. As this piece of energy heads towards the islands, it doesn't really strengthen too much. You'll also notice Debby as it moves on out. So this is valid 24 hours from this morning. So this will be Thursday morning. Here's Friday morning, Saturday morning. You see that the tropical wave does gain a little bit of energy right here as it approaches the Lesser Antilles. There is Debby, and there's Bermuda right there. It's going to try to get close to Bermuda, maybe enough for them to issue a tropical storm watch. Finally out at 96 hours, so Sunday morning, and then 5 days on Monday morning, Debby fairly close to Bermuda, but probably to the north and west, and then that tropical wave moves through the Lesser Antilles and into the Caribbean Sea. We'll have to see what it does when it gets over here. More often than not, it'll move across Central America and try to develop somewhere in the eastern Pacific. No concern for fruitful development, if you will, in the Atlantic Basin at this time. So there's a look at the tropics. Hopefully everything made sense to you and you can understand what things are like at the moment and what the forecast is, at least from the GFS, one of the many computer models out there, over the next 5 days. I am Mark Sudduth. My website, hurricanetrack.com. I appreciate you watching. And again, hopefully you learned something from these videos. I'm glad to produce them for Hurricane and Hurricane HD. And I will have another one for you tomorrow.